Now here in problem 20, we want to factor this trinomial. First thing we notice is there is nothing common all the way through. So let's write our two sets of parentheses, anticipating we can do this. And to get the x squared, we know it's the first times the first. So that's going to be an x and an x. And now what we need to do is think of two numbers that will multiply together to give 15. Then when we add together, we'll get 8. So let's look at this. So that 15, we can write as 15 times 1, or 5 times 3, I think that's it. And sure enough, the 5 and the 3, if we add those together, we can get 8. So let's put in a 5 and a 3, or a 3 and a 5, it doesn't matter the order. And we notice that the 15 is positive. So these two numbers, when multiplied, must have the same sign. And that sign is going to be that middle minus sign. So we're going to state now that the factored form is x minus 5 and x minus 3. And in 14, let's factor this one. So let's notice, first of all, nothing's common all the way through. So let's write our two parentheses, believing we can do it. How about start with x and x? Now, we need to deal with this 33. So there's not too many ways to get 33. I think what we could do is write 33 as 33 and 1. Now, when we add these, we can't get a 14. If we add them, we'll get 34. If we subtract, we'll get 32, nowhere near a 14. But we could also write this as 11 times 3. And 11 and 3, we can get a 14 out of that. I think that's the pair that we want. So let's write 11 and 3, and the 33 is positive. So these two numbers have the same sign, which is that middle plus sign. So we'll have x plus 11, x plus 3. Let's write it here. X plus 11, x plus 3. Number 22. Okay, got to think of two numbers that when I multiply them together, I get 5. When I add together, I get 3. But there's only one way to get a 5, right? 5 is a 5 and a 1, and if I add these, I get a 6. If I subtract, I get a 4. There's no way I can get a 3 out of this. I just can't get that 3 out of the 5 and the 1, so there's no way I can factor this. So we're going to write prime. And then down here, number 23, let's kind of squeeze it in here. Let's write our parentheses, anticipating we can do this, and there's nothing common here. So how can we get this 12? Well, look, we could get a 12 as a 12 and a 1. Now, with 12 and a 1, I can't get, that's a negative 1, right? I can't get a 1 out of a 12 and a 1. Cut in half and double, 6 and 2. That will give me an 8 and a 4. Can't do that. Cut in half and double. 3 and 4. Well, 3 and 4 differ by 1, so I think we've got the right pair. Let's see if we can get the signs to work. So this is going to be x and x, right? We'll start with x and x. Well, let's get a better color here. We'll go with x and x because x times x will give us that x squared. And let's try a 3 and a 4. Now, that 12 there is negative. That's negative. So if I multiply two numbers together and I get a negative, these two numbers have to have opposite signs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that negative sign right there, that minus sign, and I'm going to associate it with the bigger of these two products. Now what I mean is this. Here's the outer product, 4x. Here's the inner product, 3x. Well, this one's bigger. 4x is bigger than 3x, so I'm going to put that minus sign here. So I'll get negative 4x. Put the negative here and the positive here. Now in this 24, nothing's common all the way through, so let's begin again by writing our parentheses, thinking we can do this. So we'll start with x and x. Now notice here that the last term is a y squared. So just like the x squared, you had to start with an x and an x. Now we're going to have to end with a y and a y. So let's just draw that in there right away. And now what we're looking for are what numbers can we multiply together to get 28? Then when we add, we can get a 3. Well, let's think about it. 28, you can write as 28 and 1. Can't get a 3 out of those. What I mean is if I add these two together, I get 29. If I subtract them with opposite signs, I get 27. No way do I get to that 3. Now, cut in half and double. 14 and 2, I still can't get a 3. Cut in half and double. 7 and 4, looks like that's it, right? 7 and 4 differ by 3. So, let's put in a 7 and a 4. And because the negative 28 is, because the 28 is negative, right? I've got a negative here. These two numbers have to have the same, have to have opposite signs, right? Negative. Two numbers with opposite signs will give us negative. And the way I'm going to determine which one's the negative is I'm going to look at that negative sign there, right? That's negative. I'm going to put that negative sign with the bigger product. Now, the way I've written mine, the outer product is 4xy, right? 4xy. The inner product is 7xy. This one's bigger. So I'm going to put that minus sign right there. So x minus 7y, and then the plus sign will go here. So we'll write this. X minus 7y, x plus 4y. In 25, notice that 4, 28, and 40, they all have a 4 in common. There's 5 x's here, 4 here, and 3 here. So what we have in common is a 4 and an x cubed. So we're going to take that out. We're going to take out the 4x cubed, and if we do that, we're going to be left with x squared minus 7x plus 10, right? There was a 4x to the 5th. We're taking out the 4. There were 5 x's. We removed 3, so there's 2 left. Now what do we put here? Negative 28 divided by 4 is negative 7, right? 4 times negative 7 is negative 28. There were 4 x's. We removed 3, so there's 1 left. And then here, 4 times what is 40? Well, 40 divided by 4 is 10, plus 10. There were 3 x's. We removed all 3. So now we want to see if we can factor this. So how about 4x cubed? Here's our 2 parens. And we'll start with an x and an x. And can you see this now? This is a 10. How do you get a 10? A 10 and a 1. I can't get a 7 out of that. But a 5 and a 2? 5 and a 2 is going to result in a 7. Let's just get these signs right. So we'll go with a 5 and a 2, or a 2 and a 5. The 10 is positive. So these two numbers have to have the same sign, and it's going to be that middle minus sign. So how about x minus 5, x minus 2, and I won't write it again. It just goes in that box. 26. I see nothing common all the way through, so let's write our parentheses. And how about an x and an x? Now, as before, this ends in a y squared, so we're going to have y's in both those positions. So we'll have a y and a y. And then the numbers that are going to multiply to give us 12, that add together to give us a 1, well, 12 and 1, that doesn't work. 6 and 2, doesn't work. But 3 and 4, I think that'll work. So how about a 3 and a 4? The 12's negative. So these two numbers are going to have opposite signs. That middle negative sign there, that's going to get associated with a bigger product. Now the way I've written mine here is the outer product is 4xy. That's bigger than the inner product, 3xy. So I'm going to put this minus sign over here. That'll give us negative 4xy. So put it here, negative 4xy, and then the plus will go here. There we go.